With that, I think till the people are joining in, I quickly want to welcome Professor Dr. Jaideep, who is not, I think, somebody new. He is established name in the architecture domain, and he's a professor and vice dean at the Jindal School of Architecture. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Truly appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, Abhishek. Yes.
Great. In the meanwhile, people are joining. I'll also take the opportunity to introduce you as well. That's something very important. Professor Dr. Jaideep Chatterjee, like I mentioned, he's the professor.
Just a quick this thing. I'm not the vice dean of the school. I'm the executive dean of the school.
Executive, I'm so sorry, sir.
Yeah,
My
that's
bad. I'm
just
so
your,
sorry. I was just
yeah,
correcting
yeah,
myself. No,
yeah,
thank you
yeah.
so much, sir. Perfect. Thank you so much, sir, once again. And just to introduce you, Professor Dr. Jaideep Chatterjee is the professor and executive dean at Jindal School of Art and Architecture of OP Jindal University. We're all familiar with that. Uh, Swiss Army knife strategy, as he likes to call himself, an obsessive compulsive multidisciplinarian. Professor Chatterjee is an architect, a historian, and an anthropologist with a doctorate in history of architecture and urbanism, and another one in sociocultural anthropology from Cornell University. Professor Jaideep's academic inquiries traverse questions of design, visual culture, technopolitics, social formation of expertise, popular culture, and nationalism. His research on architects and design as a form of knowledge in post-colonial India has been published with prestigious academic presses worldwide. Professor Jaideep has taught at several universities, including Cornell, the University of Cincinnati, and the University School of Architecture and Planning, Delhi. In addition to his academic pursuits, Professor Jaideep also actively collaborates with designers, architects, artists, and filmmakers to work on many interdisciplinary projects. In his free time, trains his pack of street dogs along with his German Shepherd Nobu. He's also a sci-fi nerd who loves to cook and deconstruct everything, from restaurant menus to milk cartons. It's always a privilege having you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Abhishek.
Perfect,
Right, and thank
wonderful.
you so much for Mindler for doing this. So yeah, always wonderful and, to be a part of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. And we are looking to learn a lot. I think people will keep joining us, but I don't want
Mhm,
to make the ones waiting who are already here. Quickly to set
mhm.
the context, I already mentioned the topic, right, about art and architecture and how the blend is. I'll quickly share my perspective on this and pass it on to sir. The only perspective I have is both are very creative domains and both shy on expression and communication. And that's something we are here to hear more about and the opportunities. But sir, I cannot resist in asking you the first question. That certainly is, as somebody who's lived the domain throughout and working in the domain since forever, would love to hear your perspective. How do you see the intertwine between art and architecture?
All right. Thank you, Abhishek. Abhishek, I'm going to, I know the thing was started off with art and architecture, but actually, I'm going to extend it even more further. I'll tell you why. Just 2 days from now, actually, I am moderating a panel which is getting organized by, a huge conference that is getting organized by the OP Jindal Global University. It's called the World Education Summit. And interestingly, the panel that I'm moderating and organizing is called the panel, and it's very directly related to what we are going to talk about here today. It is called Holistic Education, Interdisciplinary Holistic Education to deal with the challenges of the 21st century, right? So let me start with this. Why? Why such a panel, and why am I talking about it here today, right? I'm fond of saying something to my students, so I'll say it to all of you, whether you're my students or not, that's a different issue, but you're all students, you're all eager to learn. One of the things that we have realized over the past, I would say now, close to 30 years, 30, 40 years, almost 3 decades now, is that the problems of the world do not come with a sign attached to them, which says, I can only be solved by a chemist or an civil engineer or an architect or an artist or anyone, right? We have realized more and more that actually, specializations, the way they were occurring in the beginning of the 20th century, have been very detrimental to how we do anything, especially, and I repeat this, especially when it comes to solving the problems of the built environment. What do I mean by the built environment? I mean, our infrastructure, our cities, our villages, right? Our parks, any environment that is built. And every environment is built if you think about it, right? And so more and more we are realizing that this very sort of what was called blinkered view of education, right? Has been very, very detrimental, because you have somebody. So you have, let's say, the person who is working on, let's say, conservation is not talking to the urbanist. The urbanist is not talking to the artist, is not talking to the architect, is not talking to, let's say, the infrastructure specialist, right? Now, what has happened as a result of it is, in a city, right? You imagine, even a little colony requires multiple agencies to work together to make it happen. Because what is a city? What is the built environment? It is essentially one system upon another system upon. Look at what happened during the COVID time. We saw it. All our infrastructure systems failed because they were built on a weak foundation, and they're both all interrelated to each other. Right? So the medical system is not apart from the infrastructure system. Right? The early warning system, the detection system. Today when uh, uh, this is made on, let's say, the communication system of a city. Everybody is working together, right? Tomorrow you want to go in there and, let's say, you want to work. I mean, let's take, for example, when New Delhi was going through something like the metro development. Just to make one line, you have to make sure that you understand the heritage, that agencies are involved. You have to understand that the entire, what is called the sewage system, the entire Jal board, electricity board, everybody is involved. You have to make sure that those who are working on infrastructure are involved. You have to make sure common people, questions of society, culture, all of that are involved, right? Now, it is impossible for any one person or one discipline to be able to manage this. It's impossible, right? So more and more what is happening is this, that we are realizing that the most exciting part of any work is the middle, the collaboration of it, right? Where you are coming together. So actually, the boundary, which we used to think was always the last point, is actually the point of the generation of knowledge, because the boundaries are where different disciplines meet. Okay?
Absolutely.
Let's start with this premise. What I'm trying to say is that today, right? If you think about the question of architecture, you think about the question of art, you think all of them have to be constantly interacting with other kind of
Absolutely.
disciplines, right? So the idea is a shift to what one calls holistic interdisciplinary understandings that are
Right.
there, right?
Right.
So more and more you will see all over the world, actually, colleges are even changing their names, right?
That's true.
They are changing their names, they are changing the way they teach, and more. So, interestingly, what has happened in India is also something we have to look at, right? India historically, especially in art and architecture, and this has been a big problem for our country. What has been the problem? Art and architecture schools have been stand-alone institutions, if you look at it, right? Let's take, the School of Planning and Architecture when it starts in 1943, stand-alone institution, right? Later on, let's say, JJ School starts even before that, 1917, right? Stand-alone institution, right? So what happened was that the people who were getting trained in a very blinkered way, right? Without understanding, without any experience of working across disciplines or working with different kinds of professionals and experts. What you will notice that is, this realization has now happened. You can look at it at the national education policy that is coming out. National education policy is constantly saying that this has been the biggest problem in our country. Right? Okay. Having standalone institutions has also resulted in another problem. Okay. So in a particular college, what do you do? Now, a course like architecture requires you to look at questions of history, requires that you look at certain questions of engineering in it, look at certain questions of policy in it. Now, do you bring everybody into a school? You cannot do that, right? So what is the new way and what is happening more and more is that we are seeing, like the rest of the world, right? People, colleges are becoming more and more as part of the larger university. And the degrees are themselves morphing, right, to become more and more interdisciplinary, because one is realizing that the nature of work out there is more and more interdisciplinary. One last point I want to make, which is that you're also realizing that interdisciplinarity cannot be forced. The idea is to give students choices in interdisciplinarity, right? And let the student create their own sort of mixes that they want to do, right? So this, I would say, in a sense, is a way for us to think about the future. One last example, as I always keep saying, that, let us look at, do you know how many architects, graduated architects, right, in this country actually work in the pure discipline of architecture? Less than 10%, right? They are already working in multiple diverse disciplines. The other day, I had an interesting discussion with one young architect. She is graduated some 5, 7 years ago. She is doing today, at current stage, 150 projects simultaneously. And she's a two-member office. I was very intrigued and doing fantastic projects. Okay? I was very intrigued. I said, what are you doing? So she said, let me tell you what I am doing. She is no longer detailing buildings out. Let's say you are a client. Okay? I am the architect. I go to you now, today, our software and our ability to create, let's say, drawings or representations of building have gotten so advanced that, let's say, today you are a client, Abhishek, you come to me and you say, Jaideep, I want to make a building. And okay,
Right,
very
right,
good,
right,
Abhishek.
right, right.
Now, I can, using photorealistic techniques, actually make a building in such great detail that visually you can see
Right.
exactly
See
what it
everything.
will look like.
Exactly,
Number
exactly.
one, think about it. Number two, with more and more sort of what are called augmented reality and virtual reality kind of techniques coming, I can take you inside that building. So as a client, I'm not even giving you plan sections, elevations, nothing anymore.
Right.
I am taking you inside a constructed building, like you would see in a
Walking
movie
away.
like The Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or
Yes,
whatever.
yes,
I'm,
yes.
I'm taking you inside the building. You are liking the building that I'm proposed to you. My job is finishing there. Another kind of architect is
It's
now
gonna make
functioning in the middle of what we call the project management stage and the construction stage.
correct.
This architect now comes and says, okay, I will detail out that building for you.
Got it.
Then another person comes in who's an architect or whatever, who's working as project management people. And then
Correct.
finally, there are those who. So you see how the discipline is changing completely. So based
Absolutely.
on the multiplicity of roles that are emerging also, right? Then there are some architects today who are saying, hell with all of this. We are not even interested in all of this kind of individual building and all of that. We are going to only work on virtual environments. So one of the highest hirers of architects today is the gaming industry.
Yes. Gamification, of course.
Why? Because every game you play is set somewhere. It has some structures on it. Constantly, I play this on my free time. I'll play this game called Angry Birds. I'm sure all of you have heard of
Yes,
it.
absolutely.
Now, the Angry Birds is a beautiful game. Why? Because all you have to do is knock down buildings in which those pigs are staying. So actually, there's an architect who is sitting and designing those little
Yeah,
buildings.
absolutely. Correct.
Do you see? So what I'm saying is the imagination that we had, or when I joined, was, oh, you go in and you make a building. It's gone. Right now, you are working half on. If there are architects are working, urban designers are working on what? Things like how do you map how disease is spreading across cities?
Of course.
Imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
So all that. So what I'm trying to say, look, today, right now, on many of the students of JSA, They are working with a company called Kala Chopal Trust. What are they working on? Designing virtual exhibitions for artists. And
Yeah,
there's a whole
absolutely.
discipline called digital humanities, digital
Yeah,
architecture, digital art, right? Which
correct.
not only means drawing using computers, it means experiencing the art digitally. So what I'm saying is the world is completely changed in that sense, Abhishek, right?
Absolutely.
And the idea is for us to know that, look, today you who are joining as students, whoever you are, you please understand that for you, your peak is going to come 20 years down the line. You will be doing things that we also are not being able to imagine. So therefore,
Absolutely.
education has to be completely future oriented. And the idea today is what we are calling holistic interdisciplinary learning. So all right, let me stop here. But so that I
No,
think
no,
is a sense for us, or a way for us to think ahead about this, right? And so we are doing this. I don't want to talk too much about my school, but I'll just give you just one example, right? In our school, for example, students are coming and they have got a choice of 10 or 12 minors that they can
right,
choose from.
correct.
Why? The idea is very simple. The idea is very simple. You are an architect, you are getting interested in questions of, let's say, I don't know, heritage management. Can you work on heritage management without understanding policy?
No way.
Cannot.
Absolutely no. Absolutely.
Can you understand anything to do with society without looking at questions of public policy, public health, this, that? So many students who are interested in this kind of work are saying, no, we want to get a
Yeah,
secondary degree. So what we have done is introduce minors. Okay? So
absolutely.
this kind of thing is really happening, as we speak. It has to happen, right? And the future is really that. I keep telling my students, and I keep, and we have so many conversations amongst architects and all of that. The old form of the architectural office, all right, in the early part and mid to early 20th century, what was the idea of an architectural office? The idea of an architectural office was that you have a senior architect or maybe 2, 3 senior architects,
Mhm.
and then you have few junior architects, and you are managing this form,
Go on.
this idea, this kind of an architectural office is dead today. It's dead. It's completely
Absolutely.
dead. If you look at the world, what you're finding is different kinds of companies. So there are two kind of trends that are happening as we see. Some companies are saying, look, I don't want the headache anymore of doing construction.
Yeah,
I don't want the headache of having to supervise or whatever. I am just going to look at develop a particular aspect. Space
right,
design is all
right.
I'm going to do. Right?
Absolutely.
Another person is coming saying that, look, I am not interested that much in space design or anything, but I am very, very interested in detailing out what happens in that space design or whatever. Right? So either you are seeing that offices and are working on smaller area of a built environment, but doing
Yeah,
multiple projects in that, right? Or you have a system in which multiple kinds of offices are coming together, right? With multiple expertise and becoming bigger firms, right?
absolutely.
Because you look at it this way. In a If you are talking about any substantial project, you will only get to even bid for that project till you have reached a certain kind of a experience level. There's no way an entering architect is not going to get a 10,000 crore. No way. Your cutoff is that, right? So one is realizing that if we are going to talk about huge infrastructure projects, huge listing projects, more and more offices have to come together to create a larger network of things. So this is one kind of movement. So other movement is, okay, if you're still working, you're kind of working on certain particular things. And the third thing is that you completely get rid of all of this and forget about buildings as such, but go really into the whole domain of experience design, exhibition design, scenography, gaming design, because all of it is part of what I would like to call the built environment now, right? And you need people who are going to do all of this, right?
Absolutely. No, Professor Chatterjee, I think a couple of points you mentioned, right? I love the fact about blindness and blinkers. I tend to believe, and I advocate this very strongly, and you will agree for sure. We are not living in a box anymore, right? The funny thing used to be you live in a box, you create, and when you get out of the professional world, you realize, oh, this is not the space. You're supposed to remove the box and live outside it. And that can
Yeah,
only happen through interdisciplinary learning. That's a
yeah,
very
yeah.
important point. And you
Yes,
rightly pointed out so many points I wanted to actually ask you. And I'm glad you anticipated that about ML, AI, VR. I'll give you examples, in fact, just to complement that. I'm somebody who loves going to museums. Pandemic happened, we couldn't visit. Virtual museums have become such a phenomenon. Look
yes,
at that. And that can
yes,
only happen. I mean, imagine how can you create that without an architect or
yes.
without somebody who's graphic designer, who is a software developer?
I'm telling you, our students are currently, our second and third year, they're doing a massive this thing. Digital Kala Chopal, they're a group of artists, who are so huge. And look, Abhishek, it is not only of the pandemic. I will tell you something. Look at it this way. Let's say there is a museum on Adivasi tribal life in Jharkhand. You and I cannot visit
Absolutely.
it every time. Now,
Absolutely.
suddenly the
Absolutely.
music, the digital realm is making it accessible.
Absolutely.
So there's a greater, more and more. Now, when in the US, and this was, I'm talking 20 years ago. I mean, this was happening there in the US,
Exactly.
I'm talking 20. So I was part of something called Serhas. Serhas was a center for the electronic reconstruction of historical and
Oh,
archaeological
wonderful.
sites.
Right.
So what were we doing in that project all across the world, right? We were saying that, look, please understand today, how have our students learned history, geography? So you've looked
Yes.
at a
Yes.
book, you've looked at this thing, but what if we could take the students while in their classroom into the historic building to learn about it, to learn about history? So what was Serhas doing? This was based in Ohio. So what were we doing?
Right.
Ohio had a huge population of Native American structures which were no
Right.
longer used.
Right.
So we were electronically reconstructing all of that under a project of the Ohio state government and distributing it to school children all the way from class 1 onwards. And that
Right.
is how they were learning history.
That's amazing. Correct.
So what I'm trying to tell you is that the world has gone, it's somewhere else. You have to understand that your skills will be
Correct.
applied at different levels completely now,
Absolutely. No,
right?
no, I completely
So
get it.
So this idea of this museum that you talked about, it is becoming a very ubiquitous idea at one level
Certainly.
nowadays.
I agree.
Everybody. So with so many kind of whether you call it curated museums, right? All of it, right? You will notice, right? They are to make it accessible. In fact, museums are becoming more and more democratic because of it. Today, you
True.
can go. Somebody else who's just got an access on a smartphone
Can
can say,
go.
"I will go
Can
to
do.
that museum."
I can do that. Absolutely.
Right. So you
No,
see
no.
how much this is also in a sense you are applying your skills to kind of a democratization of the built environment in a certain sense. So a lot of things are happening in this way.
No, no, absolutely. In
Abhishek.
fact, so you mentioned skills, right? I want to come to that. It's being said, and I think we cannot future-proof careers now. That's kind of world, but we can future-proof our skills because moving forward, careers are going to change the way beyond we know it, like you mentioned already. So, I want to hear from you, sir. What are the few skills that people, students in particular, you can speak from the university side of things as well, that students should look at building coming to the university, be it OP Jindal or generally, they should be looking for because right now they're in high school. What are the things
Right.
they should be looking at moving forward so they can actually adapt to these careers better?
You know, you know. Let's look at it this way. The kind of attitude I will say actually that even more important than skills is attitude, if I may say that.
Certainly, certainly, of course.
Because skills is also something I can teach you. But
You can't.
attitude, it's very, very important, right? If you have the right attitude, so let me say what is the attitude that is required, and then we will go into the question of skills. Secondly, right? The first thing is, and more, even at the level of school, your attitude has to be one in which you have to be open to all kinds of learning. That is, it's become essential to that. You have to keep yourself constantly open in a certain sense, right? Or constantly. So what that really translates in very pragmatic terms, very, very pragmatic terms, is that, if you are in a school that allows you to do this kind of a mixed coursework, I would say that's the way to go. That's the way to go. Number one, right? Don't think of standard kind of, oh, we had physics, chemistry, man, and that's it. In English, no. The more varied coursework you can even take at your school level. You know, nowadays, school education has also changed so much from when I was there, 30 years ago, something like that, right? You have so many chances. For example, one of the things that we are doing, example for there's an art foundation in Bangalore called Ririti. They are running what? They are engaging school children on how to develop museums, how to develop different art exhibitions. You get chances like this where you get to reach people. You get to open yourselves to different kinds of learning that are there. Those are the best kind of students suited for the kind of education we are going to see in the future. That's number one. That's your school training. In college, when you go, when you choose a college, when you look at a college, when you see, there are two things or three things I always tell everybody. So the first thing you have to look at, right? And this is very, very, look, this I will say is one thing that was true 40 years ago and it is true today, right? The first thing, the second thing, and the third thing is faculty, faculty, faculty. Very, very important. Look, because if you are, so the first thing you should check, do you have a faculty who has diverse experience? Do you have faculty who are actually themselves doing interdisciplinary, this kind of open learning, things like that? Very, very important. Very, very important, right? Do you have faculty who have, there's one thing that I've noticed, in fact, it was a practice that was banned in the United States. And, even informally, we kind of still do it. We always say something that I will never hire a student who has done architecture from my school or maybe an MA PhD from my school into my school again. Why? Because I want you to get the world's experience and then you can come back to me if you want. So the idea is for you to see collections of faculty where people from diverse background, diverse training have come together. Very, very important. So faculty, faculty. Number two, do you have this kind of diverse coursework available to you? Is it there or not? And are you able to figure out the interdisciplinarity? So the interdisciplinarity, you are the one. See, because when you empower a student, that's when the student becomes somebody who will learn how to make right choices. And you will take your own decisions about your own career. Because let me tell you one thing. The one big difference between the students today and what we were is students today know a lot more. You're far more exposed than we were. We hardly knew anything, right? Where did we have access to so much information? We did not. Where did we have access to so many things? So you guys actually are far more aware than we were, right? And I've seen at some level students today, I will say this, and maybe I'm saying this against what others say, but I will say that students today are far more aware of what they want and what they know at some level.
100%. Absolutely.
Right? The problem is, I'll tell you what the problem is. Most colleges don't have the ability to offer you that kind of diversity for you to find what you want to do. So what you have got to look for are colleges and universities that allow for the kind of combination to do exactly what you want to do. Why? Because when you do exactly what you want to do, it is never a hardship. It's the easiest thing, right? And not only that, that is what is going to get you to be this unique professional with the job market out there, right? 500 graduates who have done the same thing, what is the distinguishing mark? Why should I pick one over the other? But suddenly, when you are somebody who's saying, look, yeah, I have done architecture, but let me tell you, I've also actually, in my experience, done work on community design. I've also done work on some virtual design. Suddenly, you are far more interesting as a candidate because the world requires multi-skilled people. Right? So this is what I would say. At school, try and get involved in as many kind of opportunities for different forms of learning that are there. When you look for a college, faculty, look at coursework that allows you for interdisciplinary, integrated, holistic kind of learning, but that which allows you to make that choice. Right? So I think these are two very, very important things for you to look at, right? Because and then because see, please understand one thing. This will be again true for all of us. What is it that we can give you in 4 years or 5 years? We cannot give you your life's learning. Obviously, we cannot. Otherwise, then it would be the end of it, right? What is it that we can do? We, at an ideal place, an ideal institution is what? That says, Abhishek has this strength. Let us get the exact ways to get him there, here, and then he will shine on his own. But in order to do that, you need to have that kind of a diverse setup.
I agree. Yes.
So that's very, very important. So anyway, all right.
No, that's a very important point, sir. And I think a lot of people, I like the point you mentioned that students know what they want to do and we restrict them because we don't have the opportunity, right?
Yes.
That's a very honest way of looking at it as well. So thank you for that. Now, quickly coming to the fact, in fact, Mr. Clifton has posted a question on universities as well. So I want to come to OP Jindal and the Jindal School of Architecture and want to just hear from you an overview about the courses that we're offering here. And you spoke about minors, right? I want to hear a bit more about that and the admission process as well.
So let me talk a little bit about also the majors, right? We have actually, if we think about it, we have like 5 kind of pathways for you in terms of your major, right? So there is architecture now, which is the B.Arch program, but this is the Council of Architecture kind of regulated and accredited program. But we also have a new kind of a B.Arch program for humanities and social sciences, which is a 4-year program, right? Now, again, why do we have this? Well, because all over the world, architecture is not restricted to science students only.
Absolutely.
Right? They are humanities. So in India, we are the first school to have started this, right?
Right.
So we've started that. Then we have, what we call an interior environments kind of a program, right? Right. Then we have a program which is really looking at what we call urban and urban environments, and another which is called community or neighborhood environments. Right, which are there. Now, you have 5 of these, and then you have about 12 minors. So basically, you have 60 course combinations. What are the kind of minors? So you can do a minor in, let's say, liberal arts, along with doing any of these. Yeah. You have a minor in environment and sustainability. Hot topic. Think about it today. Almost everything you cannot get out of the. In fact, when we are beginning our school, our commencement lecture, the chairman of the Green Building Council of India is coming as our guest speaker for it. So we are very, very, very invested into this question of environment and sustainability. Right? You can do a minor in psychology, for example. It's very, very important. Think about it. The mental health, questions of mental health, questions of city health, public health. Very, very linked to the question of architecture, design, interiors, all of that. So, you can do something. You can do a minor in journalism and media communications. I will just give you an example. This is actually another fascinating sort of statistics. A huge and developing field today is publication on art and architecture.
Yeah.
Huge area today, right? We, on a lark, we said that we will start the first undergraduate international research conference, We thought maybe we will get 10 papers from all over we have gotten 100 papers from all over the world, top university. Because you see, publication and the generation of this is a huge field now. Because how do you bring awareness? How do you do all of this? There are influencers who are working on this constantly, So you're trained as an architect, then you have, you've done a course in media communications, you have become an influencer regarding city development and things like that. So, okay. Then you can do a minor in things like public policy. So, you want to get into development work. You want to get into policy advocacy as architects, as designers, as urban designers, you want to get into policy advocacy. So there are those kinds. So there are about 12 minors for you to choose from, right? Now, apart from all of this, there is also plenty of open coursework that you can do. Right. So if you say that, no, I don't want to declare a minor, but I want to take courses from all over. I mean, we have students who are saying, can I take a course in, classical music and look at the implications of architecture? Yes, you can.
Of course.
Right. Because look, for the last 100 years, architecture was always called frozen music. You see what? So the linkages that you can make, right? So how do you do that? Now you'll ask a little bit about the admissions process, and I can talk. The admissions process is again depend, for other than the BR program, which is regulated by Council of Architecture, that is obviously through the NATA scores and whatever, which is standard for the other courses. We have we have our own Jindal Creative Aptitude test that we do. Right, and it's very much like an American system of a sort of application, right? So the form is a little involved, which has a statement of purpose in it and all of that, right? You get it in, then you give your what's called the entrance exam, and then you have a interaction session with a panel and things like that, right? You get that. Now, suppose then you're granted admission. Like the US system, there are different dates for scholarship-based admission and non-scholarship-based admissions and all of that, right? So the admissions process, best way for you to is actually, just go to our website, and it's a very detailed explanation that's given on that, right? Our very helpful director of admissions, Azad, is always there to take care of things like that. Okay. So yeah, so that's about it in terms of our particular kind of coursework and things like that. And the interesting thing is this, Abhishek, like I'm saying, doing this kind of coursework, when we started soon, right? We're not that old as a school, but we had been doing this kind of a thing in the US and everywhere else. When we started in India, we started wondering that whether it will work or not over here, because again, people are not so used to all of this.
Absolutely.
You will not believe it. Today, our students are interning. Architects are interning with Wildlife Fund as designers.
Yeah.
We are sitting here and our students are interning, right, with international firms. Why? Because they're getting trained like that now.
Absolutely.
Right? They're getting trained. So in that sense, I am, knock on wood, I will say it has turned out to be a better thing that one had expected in a certain sense, right? That we are seeing students, because students are doing all kinds of combinations that, even I will give you one or two combinations. Students are doing many more combinations than I can even think of, right? They're doing it.
I agree.
Yeah.
In fact, sir, I just want to add that bit as well. You spoke about the application, right? I'm very familiar with the entire application. The Open Jindal University as a whole asks for activities. There's a reason they're doing that. They want to know that what have you been doing, because that is the same value you bring. And this is equally important.
Absolutely. It is that question of attitude that we talked about, right?
Absolutely. And that starts with intent. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I'm seeing some questions coming. Is it okay for me?
I'm coming. No, absolutely, sir. In fact, I want to ask you this question. Please, sir. In fact, you can address any of them. Would you like to start?
Right. So, there's one question I would like to talk about. This Jitendra has asked a question. Right? Jitendra says, what kind of internship opportunities do you help your students with? Jitendra, here's the interesting thing. Again, let me tell you the difference between a standard school and our school. Standard schools say one internship, architecture students or whatever, right? One internship, which 5th year mandated by Council of Architecture. That is ridiculous. You are learning. So at the end only you will go and see what happens in the field. That's completely wrong. At JSA, after your first year, you will have internship opportunities. We have created databases of more than 100 companies which have tied up with us. And these are companies like PwC, World Wildlife Fund, Neem Rana, you name it. What are we doing? Right? From day one, we are saying you study for 4 months, internship for 2 months. Study for 4 months, internship for 2 months. Right? Your entire course, it will be completely like that. You can, because can you imagine not, working on a thing like architecture or design and not having any idea of what is happening in the field? How is that even possible? Right? So it is, and you should also think of internships like so we have also done something called a reverse internship. Now let me tell you what is a reverse internship. So 4 months you are in college, 2 months you're going and doing your internship. We have introduced a thing called practicum. What is a practicum? Companies that we are tying up with, like I said, more than 100 companies that we are tying up with. We are telling them every company has something called an R&D, research and development. Yet companies don't have the kind of ability or don't have the labor or don't have the expertise to be able to actually do a lot of this research and development work. So we are telling the company, come and float that project in our school. Right? Come and float that project in our school. So while you are even studying your 4 months in school, you're actually working with a company. Right? So for example, I'll give you an interesting example. There is a recent organization called Jugadu Police. Now, who are Jugadu Police? Jugadu Police is a bunch of conservation architects, right, who are looking at heritage conservation and ideas of heritage conservation. They are recently working on a big project of the conservation of cultural and built heritage of Kashmir. They are bringing that entire project into the practicum for our students. So while our students are also doing their coursework, they're also doing what we call this reverse internship. So the idea is to break down this distinction between, oh, this is coursework, this is practice, this is theory, this is practical. The world is not like that, no. Everything requires that you do back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Right? So we have multiple kinds of systems, Jitendra. I don't know if it helps you. So all kinds of ways for you to be able to come into this, right? Now let me see. There was another question. So a couple of more questions that were coming. Let me just. I think let me just scroll down and see. All right. Are students with humanities and maths eligible for the BR? Well, here's the interesting thing. Not in the council BR course, but in the other BR architecture course, you are permitted. So please make you. It's basically, in fact, it's a more advanced course because I'll tell you why. Because Council of Architecture is still teaching us, telling us to teach things that are 40 years old. Whereas the other course, which we call the Bachelor's of Built Environment Studies, right, with a specialization in architecture, we have much more freedom to teach you exactly the kind of course that we were teaching anywhere else in the world, because we are not under the control of the council in that case. So actually, that is an interesting course that for you to look at, right? And think about it. Now, Chandrakala, right now, PG courses, nothing. We only have a PhD and a what not master's level course. We only have PhD and an undergraduate, right? 2023, my friend, just wait for that. That's when we will be starting off with. Now, somebody was asking a question about liberal arts. What is the scope after completing liberal arts? Well, it depends, right? Like, are you talking about a pure liberal arts degree? Now, if you look at a pure liberal arts degree, it depends on the kind of, again, if you look at pure liberal arts degrees have things like major and minor. But here's something I want to say. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the person who's asked. Rajvi. Right. Here's what I want to ask you. Why are you interested in the liberal arts course? What do you want to do with it? Right now, one of the things that, suppose you're interested, I mean, a lot of students I've been meeting and they keep telling me, we want to work for society. We want to do something. We want to make a change. And we think that liberal arts is something that's, I'm going to say, why don't you think of a course like community or urban design? It's basically a design course which is combined with a liberal arts degree. Right? So you want to go into the development sector, this is the course for you. right? You want to go into the not-for-profit sector, this is a course for you. You want to go into what's called, go into social activism, this is the kind of course for you, right? So all of it is available. Now, Anushka has asked the question, what streams are available for subjects such as painting and drawing without Anushka, can you clarify your question? I'm not very clear on this. What's all streams are available for subjects that is without architecture? Oh, you mean you mean
Yeah.
outside of architecture, right?
Yes.
So something like urban design is, right, which is not architecture. Something like community and neighborhood design is, which is not about architecture. Something like interiors is, which is not about architecture, right? Something like product and furniture is, which is not about architecture, right? Something like virtual environments game design is, which is not about architecture, right? There's a lot of courses where your skills, if you have skills in drawing and all of that, can come into play, right? Okay. Now, okay. Now let me ask. You're asking some very pointed questions. Let me give you an answer to this. Okay. The one question that somebody has asked, and I want to clarify this. Just give me a second. Okay. Now you've asked. So can you speak about the course? This is Satyashri has asked, and Gayatri has joined into it, right? So let me try and answer these questions. Satyashri, Gayatri, I'm gonna and Grishma, I'm gonna take all three questions of yours together. Okay. Now, scope and placements after studying built environment are this thing. The scope is as much as for any of the programs that exist. So, for example, as a part of the built environment studies program, you can again go and take a minor in, let's say, public policy or in sustainability and environment, right? And you will go and work in a design office. Right? Remember what I just told you, design offices are changing completely in the way they are working. Completely. Right? Now, Gayatri, you have asked, will you be able to work as an architect in India? Yes, very interestingly, Gayatri, what we are doing is this. You have to understand. So, I have a degree, a Master of Architecture's degree from the US. Do you think I can not come back in India and work? Right? There are students who get a degree from outside. You have to understand the Council of Architecture accepts certain degrees even though they're outside of this country for you to be able to register and practice here. Right? So what have we done? We have tied up with we are tying up with the Royal Institute of British Architects. Once you get the certification, you can come back to India. You can work here. You're allowed to work here. Right? So I hope that answers your question. Now, Grishma, you're asking a question. Can we do environmental design and game design as special? Yes. So 2022, Grishma, we are launching a minor called virtual environment, right? Where you will have courses like UI, UX, experience design. You will have what's called 3D modeling mapping, right? You will have basic coding. You see what I'm saying? All of this will be there, right? What's the difference between architecture and interior designing? Let me try to give it to you a sentence. One looks at things from outside in and the other from inside out.
Yeah.
But they're looking at the same thing. They're always looking at the same
I
thing.
think that's the best answer.
Right? Okay. Now, okay. What is the importance of math, 3D thinking, and intelligence in a? Let me tell you, math, zero. No importance. Seriously. I'm just going to be very honest with you on this. This is a mistake that people think that, math is important. It's not. It's not important at all. What do you think about 3D thinking? And when you say 3D thinking, do you mean thinking outside the box?
There's no box.
There's no box. I'm trying to tell you there's no box anymore,
No box
the way we are doing things.
Yeah.
There's no box anymore. Now, do you mean ideas to visualize? Well, please understand, Clifton. Today you have people still, students, and I don't blame you. I don't blame parents and students. But I always get asked questions like this. Sir, I don't know how to draw. Can I become an architect? And I'll say, Bacha, Do you really think that today architects sit there with a drafting pen and a sketchbook and make these buildings which have 150 floors, or you're looking at a section of a society? Do you think you can make that with your hands? Right? You don't. You have software. Look, you come into JSA, okay? We have something called the Bentley system software. What is Bentley system? Bentley system will allow you to model an entire building and calculate the heat index of that building. Do you really think you can do that by sketching? You can't. Today, the world, please, this is what I'm trying to make you understand. The world is changing. How do you, the one of the latest things that is happening, I'll tell you, is what? So they are combining two kinds of interfaces. You will be working on a table with digital things, and out there a screen will show you exactly how the building is getting designed. Where do you even need sketching in there? Right? You don't need all of these things anymore, right? It's kind of changing. Now, let me try it. Is there any subject you can opt if I want architecture, a math with painting? Yes, go into urban design, Anushka, right? Go into something like that. Go into urban design where you will look at questions of, there's a very creative side to things, right? Then there is, if you're interested in, as an urban designer, you have to look at questions of economics, urban economics, community resource management, right? You have to look at questions of project management. You will have all of these kind of programs. I mean, let me see if I can just quickly, if I can find my Abhishek, do I have the
Access to
ability
share
to
this.
share
Yes,
the
you have.
screen?
You do.
I
You
want to
should be able to.
show all the students something, right? I want to
You
show
can.
them,
I think so. You should be able to. Yes.
right. So, okay. Okay. Let's try this. No, it says host is disabled participant screen sharing. So if you can give me that permission.
I have given you the access. Let me just double check quickly.
Let me try that again. No, it's still not allowing me to.
Give me 1 second. Can
Because
you try? Can you try
yeah.
now, sir?
Let me try now. Yes, now I am able to.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Look at this coursework that is there in front of you. I'm showing you the urban community kind of coursework, okay, at JSA. Look at the kind of ateliers, the studios that you will do. Physical mobility. How do you make people move across? Now, for something like this, please understand, where is sketching? Look at the kind of pathway requirements that are there for you. As urban designers, you have to understand questions of law, governance, and community planning. You have to understand health. You have to understand the anthropology of communities. You have to understand land. You have to understand disaster and risk management. You have to understand questions of sustainability. You have to do what are called audits and assessments. So, Anushka, you were talking about combining something like math and so audits and assessment. What is an audit? You will do environmental audits. You will do what are called sustainability audits. You will do safety audits for women. So you have to understand how the world, all the kind of coursework is very, very diverse. Very, very. And look, if you go down, you will see what I mean by you get to choose your coursework. You select all of that, right? We just tell you this and you say, okay, I want to do this, this, and this, and this. I want to combine it like this, right? So please understand that the world is looking very, very different now, right? And it's kind of all kinds of combinations that are there, right? Now, virtual environments you were interested in. Like I said, it is something that is starting from 2022 at JSA. What is it? You will be given skills in things like, look, what is UI UX? Now, everybody wants to use this word. I hope you all know what is the full form of this. It is user interface and user experience. Please understand that even when there were no computers, designers had to always talk about user interface and user experience. Let us say I am a designer who's a product designer. Okay, I am making a simple knife for you, for your kitchen. Do you think I don't have to take care of user interface and user experience? If I don't do that, the first person you will cut is yourself. You will not cut anything else with that knife. UI UX is a central part of any design discipline. It has to be, because the way what is different about design and art is this, and let me tell you this and mark my words. The big difference between art and design is this: design always has users, art never has users. Think about it. When you make a piece of art, what is your relation to it? Right? It's very, very different from the kind of work designers do. For a designer, it is very, very important that user experience and user interface, how you interact with that designed object. There can be no design without it. Can you imagine a car that is getting designed without taking care of user interface and user experience? Can you imagine a house that is getting made without user experience or user interface? So UI UX is not only about virtual. This is what happens. You see, sometimes words get fashionable. Now everybody says user UI UX. But please understand, UI UX is something that we who are designers have been talking for the last 100 years. That you cannot have any design without having user interface and user experience. Right? So why only the virtual program? In a normal program also, you're going to have user interface and user. When you today, so many people who are in the interior design or interior environment, a huge potential for them is what is called exhibition design.
Absolutely.
Right? It is called scenography, where you go do design sets for movies, for theater, and things like that. Do you think you really cannot take experience into account? Right? One of my very good friends, he's an architect, then went on to do lighting design. You think light is not about experience? You think sound is not about experience? Is part of experience design. User interface and user experience always has to be there. Right? It cannot not be about that at all. Right? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you
Any
so
other
much for that.
questions that we
No, no,
have?
sir. I think you can type in your email ID because questions will keep flowing in. I know we have the paucity of time, but I just wanted to quickly thank you for this. I particularly love the conversation. It's always great listening to you, and you just share gems like always. So thank you so much for that. And I want to just mention everyone, you can reach out to sir. He's sharing his email ID. That's right there. And do
Right.
have a look at the course. That's something great that the university is doing as a whole. So I will thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to all of you.
Same here, sir.
I'll just answer Abhiraj's question.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, sweetheart, you don't. That's why you come to us. We give you access to about 250 software and dedicated people to help you learn all of those things. Okay? Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Take care. Thank
Take
you so
care.
much,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.